Welcome back, fellow parahumans, to the Scrub Lords YouTube channel. I'm going to get some things out of the way. That's what we're going to do. We're going to open this, we're going to get some things out of the way. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who liked, viewed, watched, and commented on my worms video, my worm video. So my first parahumans video, which at the time of recording this intro has over 8,000 views. So it's the most viewed video on my channel, which is crazy. I never expected that. I figured I'd get some parahuman fans watching it. I expected maybe a couple hundred, like some of the other videos I've made. As soon as it crossed 1,000, that was new territory for me, and 8,000, and it as of today, so December 29th, 2024, I'm still getting comments and stuff occasionally. I'll get people new parahumans fans and stuff who are like, "Oh my god, I just started reading it, blah blah blah." So thank you for that. Thank you for watching that video, which I don't think is very good, but I have to keep it up now because that's a lot of views, and I gained a couple subs from that. And yeah, so I'm back. I don't know. I was gonna save Ward for a rainy day, and by that I mean maybe if the channel ever blew up, it could be a treat, right? It could be hey, guess what? We're coming back with some more parahumans. My podcast hosts, Nolan and Stewie for the Nerds Cantos, which is also on this channel. It's turned into us reviewing books, comics, manga, whatever, all this stuff. We, for those who don't know, I think we've maybe talked about it in the videos before, in the podcast episodes, but if you don't watch them, each episode is about a different thing, and the way we pick that is we have this big list of stuff. Now, we don't have to pick from the list, but we made a big list of stuff we all want to read or reread or check out, and then we each pick one from that list. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily be from the list, but I think every time it's been from the list. So we picked one thing from that list, and we put it on a wheel, and whatever, it's best 2 out of 3, right? And so, last time we were gonna do this little insider info. We just did JoJo's. Now, this is a while ago. Admittedly, I'm terrible at uploading videos. So we did JoJo's Part 8, and we spun the wheel, and we got Sakamoto Days. And we all attempted to read Sakamoto Days, and being honest, for various reasons, none of us could really get into it. Nolan got the furthest compared to me and Stewie, but me and Stewie weren't really vibing with it, and it got to a point where Nolan was like, "I'm not really vibing with it. If we want to cut it, we can cut it." And so we stopped reading that. We were like, well, let's go back to the wheel. And Nolan jokingly was like, "What if I put Ward on the wheel?" And we all, because Stewie's the one who got us into Worm, and then obviously I read Worm, we got Nolan into Worm. And Nolan jokingly was like, "What if I put Ward on the wheel?" And we were like, no. And then he was like, "Yeah, you're right." And then I was like, "Well, you said it, so now you have to put it on the wheel." And so we put it on the wheel, and we spun, and we got Ward. Now, that was a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. This is a long series. And so the whole point of that tangent is to say, one, go check out our podcast. It's a fun time. And two, I didn't want to read Ward. I was content after Worm. I really enjoyed Worm. I have major issues with Worm, as you can tell if you've watched my video, but I had a good time overall. But it's fucking long. That shit is long as hell. And so I'm like, I need a break. But the podcast calls. So reading Ward, I am. And I started reading it, and I was like, well, shit. If I'm reading it, I might as well, I gotta make a sequel to my most viewed video on the channel. So, without further ado, let's review Ward. Okay. I currently am about 10 chapters into Ward, or 10 arcs, sorry. Which I know in the Worm video, I don't remember exactly where I was at when I started the video, but I remember I was doing, towards the end at least, it was an arc per segment, or 3 arcs per segment, or whatever I was doing. I don't remember what I was doing. But I didn't want to I wanted to do this sooner, but it is right after Christmas, and so I was, Christmas happened, and I'm, it's fucking the holidays, I'm on vacation, and finals were happening, so I couldn't sit down. I didn't have the energy to really read a lot of Ward or sit down and record Ward. But I'm here now to talk about it, to talk about the first 10 arcs. So I'll kind of keep this a little brief, I think. Give my descriptions of what's going on, as I tend to do, and then my thoughts. So if you don't know, if you haven't read Ward, but you've read Worm, you're in the perfect place. If you haven't read either, and you're watching this video and you somehow made it this far into this video, click out of here, go watch my Worm video, or read Worm. Ward is definitively a sequel to it. Everything that is happening in Ward only can happen because of Worm. And I don't think this would be a fun book or series or whatever, web series, whatever, if you hadn't read Worm. So if you're here and you haven't read Worm or watched my video, go watch my not great 3-hour long video. Unless you just want to watch this one, in which case, cool, I guess. But, fucking Ward. So this takes place, I want to say a year, maybe 2 years or something, after Gold Morning, after the big thing. And this, we're following Victoria, aka Glory Girl from Worm, which is crazy, And she, in the first arc, she's on this, I can't remember the name. I think they're called, the Patrol or something, but it's basically a team of, teenagers and, young adults without powers who are trying to keep peace, because all the Earths are connected now, so they're trying to make shit not terrible. And so Victoria's on this team, and she ends up getting kicked off because she has to use her powers, and we'll get into her powers later, but she has to use her powers, and they don't want people with superpowers, so they kick her off the team. She goes to Jessica, the therapist from Worm. Crazy pull. There's a lot of Worm side characters that kind of show up here and there. But she goes to Jessica, and Jessica's like, yeah, I've got this team in group therapy of parahumans, and they're going to start a super team. I would like for you to sort of watch over them, because Jessica doesn't like the idea of the team. She doesn't think it's a good idea, because not all of the people in the therapy are good. They're not that they're evil. Well, a couple of them are villains, but they're not all mentally stable enough to do that, right? So Victoria's like, sure, whatever, I'll go do that. And Victoria herself has a lot of problems, considering her adopted sister Amy turned her into a meat blob for a little bit there, She joins this team. They end up calling themselves Breakthrough, but that takes ages, right, for them to finally get a name. But she joins this team, and the team includes Kenzie, who will go by Lookout, who is an 11-year-old, which I'm like, Jesus Christ. I know teenagers and young children can be superheroes, but damn, 11 is a little crazy. But Kenzie's a tinker with camera powers, so she can make really good cameras and stuff, and she can hack into computers and find files. And Kenzie's a fun character who I guess a good example of stuff Kenzie can do is she's made a camera that can see the past and scan the past and then visualize it, which is, I don't even know how that shit works. I don't know if Wildbow knows how that shit works, but it's cool. It's a cool invention. And so we got Kenzie. There's Chris, who goes by Cryptid, who can morph his body into various forms, but they're tied to his emotions. It's disgusting. I'll throw some fan art of him on screen. I don't even want to know how his power works. It's awful. We've got Tristan and Byron, who are twins. When they triggered, their bodies combined into one, so they have to switch back and forth. So there's technically two bodies. They technically are separate, but only one of them can be out at once. So it'll be Tristan will be out, and then he has to let Byron out, and then his body will become Byron's body, and then Byron has to switch, vice versa. But they have a shared power. So Tristan can make stone and rocks and stuff, and then Byron can make water, but he can also turn Tristan's stone and stuff into water, which is very interesting. I enjoy them. I enjoy their dynamic. It's a unique way to run like a kind of paired superpowered character, so that's interesting. Sveta is there, aka Garrote, I think, from Worm, who's a Case 53. She's in Worm towards the back half of Worm a lot right now. Her and Weld are dating. Weld's mention is always fun. He shows up a couple times. I don't know, she's Case 53, so like her power is her body, you know. She's cool. I like Sveta because she was in Worm and stuff. And her and Victoria are friends. They were in like the physical therapy in the hospital together when Victoria was a meat blob, so that's cool. And then we have Rain, who is Rain is a cluster trigger. Now I don't remember if cluster triggers were in Worm, but in Ward cluster triggers are pretty big. It basically means a group of people trigger at the same time, and so they all get the same powers. They get 4 powers, but they all get access to everybody's powers, and then their mental states get connected, so they can, like, after you cluster trigger, your just mental being sort of alters and changes a little bit. It's like a bit of a tug and pull kind of situation going on with like everyone you triggered with, and then you like share dreams, and then every day some person's like power is stronger. So like some days Rain's main power will be stronger, and then other days the other people he triggered with are stronger, which is very interesting. Rain is he's my favorite member so far. I like Rain a lot. He has like 4 unique powers. Like he got a Tinker power. He can throw like translucent scythes. I don't know. He's got a lot of shit going on. And then there's Ashley. Rain, I can't remember. I'll say Tristan and Byron go by Capricorn. I cannot remember Rain's super name because the last time they said it, Rain was like, at least for where I'm at, Rain mentioned he hasn't picked a good super name yet, so I don't remember his name. They kind of just call him Rain. And then we have Ashley, who has 2 super names technically. Damsel of Distress, I think, and then Swan Song, which is what they call her by. So Ashley is actually a clone of the real Ashley, who was a Slaughterhouse 9 member. So Ashley is one of the Slaughterhouse 9 clones, and her power is like, she's got like explodey hands. I don't really know how it works. They've talked about it a lot, and I kind of keep forgetting. But that's the team. That's Breakthrough. And so it starts off, they're in therapy, blah, blah, blah. They're going to like form this super team. And let me tell you, the terrible idea. This is an awful, abysmal idea. Taylor Skitter herself had some terrible ideas in Worm, but this goes up there. Okay, this is a team of people who all have insane problems. They all have unique issues that they 100% definitely need to work on, and instead they're gonna go form a super team and be superheroes. Some of them, Chris and Ashley, don't even want to really be superheroes. They're just there. Right? This is bad. And then so the first major thing that happens to them is they deal with Rain, who's actually a member of the Fallen, which is a religious cult that worships the Endbringers. Insane, right? And so Rain's a member of the Fallen, and he wants out of the Fallen, because of course he does. Like, why would you want to be there? But members of Rain's cluster trigger are coming to murder him, because when Rain was a member of the Fallen, when they all triggered, Rain was on this mission with a couple of the villains in the Fallen, where they trapped a bunch of people in a mall, in like a shopping mall, and then lit it on fire. And Rain didn't want to do it, but he did it because he's in a cult. He's sort of brainwashed, and by sort of I mean he definitely is brainwashed. And so he like regrets doing it. In the moment he didn't want to do it, but he did do it, and he didn't help anyone. And so they're pissed off at him because they all lost people in this fire, and then they cluster triggered, so now they're all like mentally connected, and all of them blame Rain because now that they've cluster triggered, they're kind of like villains, and so they blame Rain for making them villains. For one, just trapping them in the mall and setting it on fire, but then also because their minds are connected, they're like thing. They're like, you know, the side of you that was a villain has infected us. And so they want to kill Rain. So the first major thing, major arc, like I think it's like the first 5 or 6 chapters of Ward are Rain's enemies, like Snag, Love Lost, there's a couple of them, you know, in the interludes and stuff, they show this. But they're gathering like a bunch of villains from a town called Hollow Point, which is a town where villains live on one of the many Earths that are connected. And they're going to go attack the Fallen headquarters, like the Fallen town. And so it's a big fucking war arc, just right off the bat. There's no, like, easing your way into it. It starts with a war arc. And they all, like, the Fallen are going to war. The Undersiders are there. Like, the Undersiders have been hired. It's really, they've been hired by, like, Snag and Love Lost to help kill Rain. And from what they've gotten, like, their side of the story, they're like, Rain's a pretty fucked up guy, so we're okay with killing him. It's fun to see Tattletale and, like, Bitch and stuff, because Victoria hates Tattletale. Rightfully so, I guess, but, like, I don't know, it's fun to see the opposites. It's fun to see a character, like the POV of a character who just despises the Undersiders after reading about them for so long. But basically, there's this big war arc. And the big threat of the Fallen is this woman known as Mama Mathers, who's like, she like heads this group of the Fallen, and she can basically brainwash you. If you look at her, you can, like, she can infect your mind, and then she's always there, and she can see out of your eyes and stuff. She's crazy. But that's the first big arc of Ward. And I want to give props to Mr. Wildbow here, Mr. John C. Wildbow, because goddamn, can this man invent superpowers? Now, I know we talked about this, and by I talked about this a lot in the Worm video, but he consistently makes the most interesting / overpowered / I don't even know how you could come up with superpowers. Like, for me, it's on the same level of, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures with the stands, where, like, you know, in JoJo's, Araki will come up with stands that no human man should ever even be able to think of. And that's how I feel about Wildbow, with, like, the Mama Mathers and like cluster triggers and shit. Even Victoria with the Wretch, like, it's consistently entertaining whenever, like, a new villain shows up, and trying to beat them, I love it. Here's the thing: if you read Worm, or if you watched my video, basically all of my critiques from Worm, and I think maybe a lot of people's issues, I don't really know what the fan base thinks, but a lot of what I thought were the issues with Worm remain. It's very long. It's very unedited. A lot of these chapters are word blurbs and, like, just stuff that I don't think is necessary in writing. Like, I think you could trim a lot of these chapters, right? And I don't think they're written poorly. And obviously, before Wildbow wrote Ward, I think he wrote a couple other long-ass web serials in between. And you could tell his writing has improved. Like, he's gotten better. The prose is better. The writing is better. But there's still, like, stuff where in a real novel, you know, an editor would be like, okay, you don't need this, like this. There's redundancies and blah, blah. And I think a lot of these, Wildbow has this tendency to sort of just ramble, where, like, in a real novel, I think okay, not that this is a real novel, that's not the right way to say it, let me rephrase this. So the interludes in Ward and Worm are fucking long. If you don't know, the interludes drop you into the POV of a character most of the time you've met before or you've heard about before, and you kind of get a chapter of what they're doing, right? These things are long as shit, okay? They've always been long as shit, and they just go on forever with, like, redundancies. Like, information is repeated, and this happens in the normal chapters too, but information is repeated. Information that you've already gotten is repeated, like passages are repeated. Stuff you don't need to see repeated is repeated. And my other issue that I had in Worm with the interludes remains with this, and it's that you don't get, like, you get this interlude of this character. Wildbow puts you in the perspective of this character. You get to see how their mind thinks, you get to see what they're up to, you get to see why they're doing what they're doing, and then you never get their POV again. So if you liked it or you didn't like it, you're never going to get that POV ever again. It just disappears forever, even in moments of like if you think you need it. A good example of this, Rain. So Rain obviously is like the focal point of this first arc, because our main characters, our breakthrough, is trying to protect him from getting assassinated while also trying to take down the Fallen at the same time. Big war, right? And so Wildbow, in between like main chapters, starts to put in Rain interludes where you get to see how the Fallen works. You get to see the characters Rain is interacting with, and that's where Rain became my favorite character, because I just think he's very interesting, and the way these interludes are written is very interesting. And everything about it, I really enjoy it. And there's a couple, I think there's like 3 or 4 Rain interludes. And you really get into, you get his backstory with like why he's in the Fallen and like all this stuff, right? And then during the war arc, some big stuff happens. And he ends up, like big stuff happens to him, and it happens off screen. Just like completely off screen. Like Victoria runs into a room and Rain has like lost a major fight against one of his cluster mates, and they're about to kill him. And this is like stuff I want to see. And for instance, he ends up killing one of his cluster mates, and it happens in an interlude, but we get it in this one I'm okay with, but we get it in an interlude from, I think it's Snag he ends up killing. So we get it in an interlude from Snag's perspective, which I think is very interesting. But I'm like, I want to see that from Rain's perspective, because like he's a main character and you've given me his POV before, so I want to know like I want to see what's going on in his mind more so than in Victoria's in this moment. So I think more so than Worm, I think this story could use from like POV switching. I do not think it now Victoria is the main character and she should stay the main character, and I do enjoy Victoria a lot, partially just because she's like a good person, and it's nice to see not Taylor. It's nice to see like a superhero try to be a superhero. But I think Ward, at least from where I'm at, could really benefit from more POV switching between breakthrough. I'm not saying it's got to be all the time, but for like the big moments, I do think it would be nice, is all I'm saying. So after everything I just said, which was very long-winded because I have no script, this is a very rambly video of mine. Wildbow, the war arc ends. You have a little wrap up. Rain and Ashley, Ashley kills someone mid-war arc, fucking melts a guy. So Rain and Ashley are like, we're going to go to prison for our crimes because we're good guys, which is very interesting. It's a fun character development for both of them. And in the middle of their trial, because Wildbow does this, he did it in Worm, and he still does it here, where after a major arc, you kind of have an arc of, I don't want to say like wrap up, but it's like a calm down arc, like, all right, we're going to chill out for a couple days here kind of arc. And so in the middle of this chill out arc, we get an Ashley flashback arc, which basically explains her entire life. I do not know why. It is like, I mean, it makes sense thematically, I suppose, with her trial and stuff, but it is weird because it's just out of nowhere. Like, you just get it. It's not an Ashley centric. Like, it's not like during the Rain arc where you're getting Rain interludes and it's like, yeah, well, it's a Rain arc, right? No. This is not like an insane main Ashley arc. I mean, it's important that she's going to jail, I think. I don't know. It was weird. I thought it was weird. It very much disrupts the pacing completely. And I would best compare it to the Traveler's arc from Worm, where you're reading from Trickster's perspective. But with that arc, now I'm biased, I love Trickster. But with that arc is very interesting because the Travelers have been sort of a mystery the entirety of Worm. Up until that point, like, you want to know what's going on with the Travelers, and specifically with Noelle, like what that is. And so getting to go back and then learning like they're connected to the Simurgh and they're from a different Earth and stuff, like all of that, I think, is, while it sort of can be said that it disrupts the pacing and stuff in Worm, like I could see where that's coming from, is very important. And I'm not saying the Ashley stuff isn't important. It's good to know who she is and why she is, but it is, I hated it. That's the best way I can say it. It's long. I think it's rambly. I don't think it's necessary, at least not in this exact moment. I think you can sprinkle those interludes in better spots. But either way, this Ashley thing wraps up, and this kept me from reading Worm for about 2 weeks, I think. Now, also, I went on there was Christmas vacation, there was finals, then I went to Dragonsteel with Nolan. So I wasn't really reading a lot of Ward in that moment anyways, but this made me not even like want to like, I didn't even have it in the back of my head where I was like, maybe I could read some Ward. I was like, nope, I really don't want to read the Ashley arc. But I powered through it and was immediately rewarded because we get an arc with Goddess, who well, first after that we get this interesting arc with like Kenzie and her parents are abusive and trying to murder her and just absolute pieces of shit, and they have to like go on television, and this is where they announce their name and stuff, and this is a very interesting arc, and I think Ward has picked up a lot for me here. Now, I liked the Mama Mathers Fallen War stuff, but this to me is very interesting because they've got this prison, right? Rain and Ashley are in this prison. It's a prison of supervillains on a different planet because, planet travel is available. On this planet, or this prison world, I'll say this prison, Teacher from, the fucking villain from Worm who didn't do anything, is trying to take over the prison in the sense that he's trying to, like, get a bunch of useful, superpowered people from the prison. And at the same time, we've got this new character named Goddess who Taylor actually like during Gold Morning like kidnapped and did Taylor stuff to. And so Goddess's whole thing is she can take over people with superpowers. And she used to own an Earth. Like, she owned an entire Earth pre-Gold Morning. Like, took over her Earth completely. And so she now wants to, like, retake over an Earth. And so we've got this sort of Goddess and Teacher war brewing on the horizon. And this arc is very interesting because Goddess is working with Amy. So we get a lot of Amy content, and Amy and Victoria actually meet up. And in them meeting up, Goddess like takes over the entire team except Byron because he's like currently switched out. Like, it's Tristan's turn, so Byron can't get taken over. And it's a very interesting arc. And it all culminates in this big Teacher Goddess, like, not them fighting each other, but a big war between their people. And Cryptid, or Chris, ends up killing Goddess. And this is after a whole ton of events. Like, obviously, I'm not here to spoil the entire thing, only the sort of big moments and talk about my feelings and stuff. So Chris ends up killing Goddess, and then it turns out that Chris and Amy are working together, and maybe Amy takes orders from Chris. I haven't gotten further than sort of this area, so I'm unsure. But Amy is maybe taking orders from Chris, and Amy declares to all these like supervillains at this prison, she's like, we're going to go to another Earth, we're going to take over this Earth, and that's what we're going to do. And a bunch of people follow her, so her and Chris leave. So we've got like a sort of team betrayal thing going on. Amy's causing Amy shenanigans, which is, I love the dynamic between Amy and Victoria, because Victoria's not a murderer. She doesn't want to murder people, but if she murdered Amy, I wouldn't say anything. I get it. I'm an Amy hater. I've been an Amy hater for a long time. And getting it from Victoria's perspective, yeah. I mean, when you're turned into a blob of meat, for like 2 years or whatever it is, like, I think it's completely fair to hate Amy. By the way, fuck Victoria's mom for wanting Victoria and Amy to, like, be chill again. There's no more being chill once you turn your sister into a blob of meat for ages and also make her fall in love with you for a little bit. Nope. Sorry. I would hate her for life. But that being said, that's most recently where I'm at, basically. I'm in the sort of rest arc after that, which is what 10 is about. So this is everything leading up to 10, but it's very interesting. I like all the plots going on because now Teacher's brewing. And so we've got big Teacher things because Goddess is dead now, which leaves Teacher sort of maybe open in a little bit of a power vacuum. I'm unsure. And also, this arc I'm currently in is setting up Undersiders stuff, and I like a lot of it. And so I know we're brewing for a big Teacher thing, but I'm also interested to see like where the Undersiders are going. And all of this stuff is very interesting. Also recently got an interlude from Tristan's POV, so we get Tristan and Byron's backstory, and that I really enjoyed. Seeing Tristan kind of like snap and lock Byron away, like he pretends he killed Byron for I think like 70 days before he like snaps out of it and it's like, I can't do this anymore, like I killed my brother, and then Byron like comes back and stuff. very interesting to see that complete dick move from Tristan's part, but I understand where he's coming from. Like, I understand why he completely snapped. And again, this is why I'm like advocating for more POV changes, because I really enjoyed the Tristan and Byron POV and like this backstory as I did with the Rain stuff. So I liked we got a couple Kenzie POVs. I just slapped my mic. So I would like more Kenzie like I want more POVs from everyone is what I'm saying. But that's Ward. That's where I'm at so far. It's Parahumans, you know. Being halfway through it, because I believe there's 20 arcs, which is, oh God, oh man. But being halfway through it, it has all the same problems as Worm. I think writing wise and story wise, I also think it has a very similar thing to Worm, where there is no, even in these rest arcs, I don't feel rested. And maybe that's the point, but like I think it would be neat to be a little, I don't know, maybe there's like a smaller arc of them just beating up some villains or something, you know? I don't know. We'll see. I feel like it's an endless roller coaster, and after, you know, however long on the roller coaster, you start to get tired of it, if that makes sense. So a lot of the same problems with Worm, but overall, I still think it's fun. I'm still really enjoying most of what I've read. Let's do some more fucking Ward, I guess. Okay. Some crazy shit happened. I've just finished 11. So last time I left off, I think I was halfway through 10. Or maybe I had just started 10. It doesn't matter. What I'm going to try to do, I think, and this is what I did for Worm, is about 1 to 3 arcs in a little cluster of segments, I guess. Makes it easier to talk about and give my thoughts before they all sort of gel together and I forget what I'm doing. Now, this arc is great. My love for Ward is kicking up. Still all the same problems. There's an insane amount of interludes. They're still, you know, long-winded. They kind of go on forever, much like this video and me. So we find ourselves sort of at the start. If I remember correctly, 10 is kind of a little refresher. You know, we're going to take a little bit of a break, get stuff together. Victoria is currently getting the super teams to like actually organize and kind of create like a bigger organization of super teams that work together, because like crime is really, really bad right now because there's no law or government, which is a problem. So good on Victoria for this. I really like this plot. I think it's interesting with like the dynamics between some of the other some of the other teams don't really like Victoria, or they don't like the other team, you know, this other team, or they're new to being heroes in general, blah blah blah. Then moving on from that, we get a lot of Undersiders content. Let's go. My goats are back. Okay, we got Tattletale, we got Imp, we got Chicken Little, who's a new member. I'm fucking with Chicken Little. He's a chiller. I think his name's Aiden. The Heartbreakers are here. They're insane. You know, as well, we know they're insane. We've met their siblings. In this arc, 10 and 11 see the Breakthrough and the Undersiders team up because March, who we've met before, March was briefly helped Rain out during the Fallen War arc. March, she's interested in cluster triggers, at least according to Rain. She actually cluster triggered with Foil, a character from War, you know, one of the Undersiders. I forgot to mention Foil and Parian. Love those two. Sort of dealing with this. And March is teaming up with Cradle and Love Lost, who obviously want to kill Rain. So they, you know, got a bit of a predicament here, and Breakthrough and the Undersiders sort of come to an agreement where they're like, all right, let's team up and let's take them down. Because March is also investigating the time bubbles in Brockton Bay, because there's a million of those, because that city got fucked up on a daily basis. But that's an issue because like every thinker in the world told Victoria, do not touch those. Bad business. So it's, as where I'm at with 11, it's very like, okay, what's going on with the time bubbles? I don't know why March wants them just yet. And I really I don't know why she would even want them in general. Like, I can't even think of it. But 11 is mostly dealing with Cradle and Love Lost because we find out that Cradle has this either a new power or he invented a new piece of technology that can cut you into little bits, kind of like, I guess the best way to describe this is like Buggy from One Piece. If you don't know what One Piece is, it's this character Buggy who can basically detach parts of his body and then they can like float around and stuff. That's his like power in One Piece. So Cradle has found a way to do that, but to other people. So first, Cradle completely destroys this team called the Navigators, which are supposedly like this pretty chill super team, you know. So it's kind of like all the superheroes are on edge. They're like, oh shit, we're gonna have to find out who did this. And you find out it's Cradle because on the attack, the Undersiders, I've been calling them the Breaksiders in my notes I've taken. They split into 3 teams and go attack like Love Lost and March and whatever, or the Love Lost and like Cradle base, and in the process, literally every team except for Victoria's team, which includes Victoria, Rain, technically Bitch or Rachel, but she wasn't even really there, but she ends up joining in. So Victoria, Rain, Bitch, a couple of the Heartbreakers, and Foil and Parian. So everyone else, like all the other Undersiders, like Tattletale, Chicken Little, blah blah blah, like Capricorn, you know, all the other members of Breakthrough, they get fucked up by Cradle and are completely like dismembered and missing body parts. And we find out that Cradle and Love Lost fled the scene and then took those body parts that are missing. So now there's just like Capricorn is like bisected, so his legs are gone. They broke Sveta's suit, so she doesn't, like, she can't be around people anymore because, you know, she can't control her body and they're basically razors. Kenzie's missing a leg and she's missing, like, fingers and stuff. It's honestly a disgusting chapter to read. Extremely well done. But Victoria, Rain, Foil, Ashley, technically, even though she's kind of fucked up, Rain. Yeah, I said Rain already. What the fuck am I doing? The members of Breakthrough / the Undersiders that aren't jumbles of flesh bits everywhere have decided they're gonna go and kill Cradle and possibly Love Lost, which is a little crazy that they've gotten the AOK. They even got the AOK from Natalie, their lawyer, who's a chiller. I like Natalie a lot, but even Natalie was like, yep, I back this completely after seeing the scene. And that's where I left off. I love this arc. Yes, it's probably partially because the Undersiders feature heavily in it. They the goats. I love the Undersiders. But also, I asked for more non-world ending events. Like the Goddess and the Teacher War, which I know we're going to have to do eventually, or the Teacher stuff we're going to have to deal with eventually, is like very world ending, megalomaniacal, like I'm 10 steps ahead of you kind of. To me, that like once you read one arc of that, I'm like, I don't want to read this anymore because I'm tired. So getting a big Fallen War arc and then the Goddess War arc back to back is for me very tiring. So I like that this is a very, like, they're fighting Cradle, they're fighting Love Lost, and they're technically fighting March. They're fighting 3 kind of big villains, but all of them, like those 3 villains, while they are kind of big and they have like underlings and stuff, they're attached personally. Like Cradle and Love Lost want to kill Rain. March wants to kill Foil. You know, and technically Rain owes March a favor, right? So all of the characters are connected. We've interacted with them before, so they're characters I know and understand. So I'm really liking this arc. This is exactly what I wanted. It's got personal stakes. It's more, not grounded isn't the right, it's not the right word because everything is crazy in this universe always. And I just described characters getting cut into Lego flesh bits, but like it's not an insane world-ending threat yet. It might become that, but at least it started off lower. So I'm really enjoying this one. This is what I wanted from Ward. As mentioned earlier, though, all of my issues with how long-winded it is, remain here. Also, something I didn't mention. I hate the way Mr. John C. Wildbow uses cliffhangers. Because you'll get to an end of a chapter, and this just happened recently. It'll be like, one of Rain's powers is it's like an emotional aura he can send out that affects other people, kind of like Victoria's. And they end this chapter with Victoria being like, "I know how you can use your emotional power," and then it just ends. And then they cut, and they're like fighting the villains that they were setting up to fight at the end of the last chapter, and they don't really like. He doesn't explain what he meant by that. He just kind of hopes that you gather it, and sometimes I do gather it. But in this case, with Rain's emotional power, maybe I like missed a sentence or something. It happens when you're reading. But like, I don't really know what she meant. I don't know what Victoria meant, and they seem to make it work now. But I'm sitting here like, you couldn't have just had that conversation. And I understand, nuance and subtlety is always good and fun, and I advocate for that in all of my stories, obviously. But sometimes there's conversations and moments that I would like to see because they like inform characters and how characters are going to interact later. And I don't know. The Rain emotional power one isn't necessarily one I need to see, but it's stuff like that happens very often where it'll be a big setup moment. Like, oh my god, next chapter you're gonna hear about insert this thing. And then it doesn't happen. They just cut over it, and they fill you in on it later. And I'm like, no, just let me see that scene. You know what? A good example, and this was a big thing that happened, we got more Chris information. Chris is actually Lab Rat, a thinker, he's not a changer, he's just injecting himself with emotion drugs that he makes that allow him to change his body. But Lab Rat was like briefly mentioned in Worm a couple times, I remember, especially towards the end of Worm. And we got this crazy Chris interlude where he's not really Lab Rat, he's like a clone experiment of Lab Rat, but not a real clone. And so we get this chapter where Victoria gets this information from Dragon, and we start to get her reaction to this Chris information, and then it cuts completely, and she already knows it, and then she has to tell the team about it. And I'm sitting there, and I liked her telling the team about it. There was an extremely well-written scene of the members of Breakthrough reacting to learning Chris is like a 32-year-old insane supervillain in very good ways. It was very well-written. But I'm like, I wanted to see Victoria's reaction. I wanted to see my POV character's reaction to this information. So I don't know. It's stuff like that Wildbow does very often, where it just pisses me off because I feel like I'm missing chunks of, like, I feel like I'm missing scenes. I feel like if there was an extended cut or a director's cut or whatever, or if I found like a deleted scene, it would be there, and it feels necessary to me. Although I guess it's not wholly necessary, but I wish it was there. Back with some more wonderful Ward. I finished 12 to 13, so we've got some crazy advancements here. And I've got a big critique that I think I've been holding in my soul for a long time. So, big things. This was the end of the, I guess what we'll call the Cradle Love Lost arc. Big reveals is that Cradle has been manipulating the dreams in the cluster to make everyone think Rain was worse than he was, which is interesting. Also, Cradle's like chopping people into little tiny bits. This arc was crazy. It's like 10 chapters of just action. You know, what you come to expect from a Worm, Slaughterhouse 9-esque arc. And, I don't know, they get Love Lost, they get Cradle, also March is very important in this arc. She is working with Cradle and Love Lost to like do very big things, big crazy shenanigans. In fact, March, who also wants to kill Foil because she triggered with Foil, March is doing stuff with the time bubbles in Brockton Bay. So Breakthrough and the Undersiders team up to fight Cradle and Love Lost and their gang. and then the other heroes, like the other big heroes, go to deal with March and her gang. And so that's it. And then it's just a bunch of action. And first, now that I'm thinking about it, I have a couple complaints. One, here's the big one. I'm coming into this. I enjoyed this arc. This arc was fun. It's well written. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever. The action was interesting. I'm sick of how hopeless this story or Wildbow is, because Worm was so beyond hopeless, and I think that's a big reason why I didn't want to read Ward. I think I'm coming to terms with it because listen, I like fucked up dark stories, okay? I like The Boys, I like Berserk, I like Joe Abercrombie's First Law, right? Like, I like grimdark, I like fucked up stuff, blah blah blah, But I have a threshold because I prefer whimsy and like hope-filled stories. So I have a bit of a threshold personally where it's like I can only take so much of it. And a thing I love about Berserk is while it is filled with this dark, bleak, disgusting shit, there's hope at the end of the day, right? That's kind of... Now, it's been a while since I've read Berserk, so I'm not going to say the message is there's hope at the end, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but, like, you can feel it there. Like, Guts gets better. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in Ward, but god damn. It doesn't feel like it a lot of the time. Like, for instance, they beat Cradle, they beat Love Lost. They all get fucked up. In fact, Kenzie has to leave the team because she gets mutilated, and they fix her, but then she's like, I don't know, like, this is twice in a week I've been hurt. I'm going to leave the team before PR issues happen. And she actually forms a team with fucking Chicken Little and some of the Heartbroken, which is cool. That stuff's neat. But you get out of this bleak-ass arc, and the way it ends is they get Cradle, they get Love Lost. Victoria accidentally smears her mom into the concrete because no one knows how the wretch works, and her mom tried to get close to her while she was using the wretch. So then her mom and dad leave to go to Earth Shin to go be with Amy, presumably so they can heal Victoria's mom. But still, like, that's fucked up. That's bleak, And then March technically wins and pops one of the time bubbles open and frees fucking Dauntless from Worm, and he basically becomes an Endbringer. He's now in between every Earth, and he's like a giant, and the Simurgh is there with him. So I'm like... I don't feel any hope here, I don't feel any like wins, and it's kind of there, like the characters are still superheroes and they're still trying, but I'm just like, fuck, like where is the hope or the anything? Like, it's just bleak and dark, and I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's making me not want to read it anymore. But obviously I gotta keep reading it because I'm stuck here making this fucking YouTube video. Excuse the yawn. So that's 12. And then 13, immediately we get that the heroes, because all the teams are working together, which I really like. I like that Victoria had managed to get all the teams to kind of work together. Any villain that they deem too evil or too, like, we have to get rid of, they open a portal to an uninhabited Earth and just kick them into it. With a couple supplies, some food or whatever. But, like, what? And they're like, Victoria... Oh, Jesus. I'm talking about Ward. I'm getting tired. But Victoria is like, oh, I kind of feel bad doing this, but we have to do it. No, you don't. No, you could just, like, put him in prison. I know the prison was destroyed, but you can find another prison. Like, this doesn't... And they're not even giving them, like, trials. The public doesn't even know about this. The public just knows, like, villains are going into the building and fucking disappearing. So that's happening in 13, and then Jessica shows back up because in an interlude, Valkyrie freed her, or found her. And so Jessica shows back up, and Jessica's like, I don't want to talk to you, Victoria. You're a piece of shit. And when Victoria's like, why? Jessica's like, I read your diary. And Victoria's like, well, I don't have a diary. So then Victoria goes to her computer, reads her diary, and it's all this, like, fucked up info about Breakthrough and how she's, like, manipulating them. And so then Victoria teams up with Tattletale to, like, investigate who did this. And this is setting up the teacher arc, Teacher is doing this, and we have an interlude that shows Teacher has, I think he takes over Earth Chite completely, and then he also has taken over Cauldron's old base, and so now he is basically Cauldron, you know, like in that big ass base that they used to, or one of the bases they used to have. I'm sure they had a million. But so we're setting up the Teacher arc here, which is neat. I'm interested in the Teacher arc. Teacher's been one of those characters that's constantly referenced in Worm and now in Ward. So, you know, that's interesting, I guess. It's still dark and bleak. There's a little more hope where I'm at the end of 13, the start of 14. It's a little nicer. I'm interested to see if we end on a end of the world cataclysmic event against Teacher or against Amy or against the Simurgh or Dauntless or anything else here, because I'm on 14 and it's wrapping up. I mean, there's only 20 if I'm correct. Now Worm had like 30. I think there's only 20 in Ward, which means I'm more than halfway through, and to be honest, that seems crazy to me, because Worm, I remember like the arcs were long, and then in this the arcs aren't, they're really only like 1 to 3 blocks of like, you know, 10, 11, 12, right? It's like an arc. So I'm interested. Not even. Sometimes it's contained. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how this all wraps up, but I'm thinking Teacher is the big setup, because I don't feel like there could really be anything else unless it's something to do with the Endbringers. But if it is something to do with the Endbringers, I think they're cooked. That's Ward. That's where I'm at right now. I will add a little second tangent. My big issue outside of how bleak it is there's too many fucking characters in this book or this story. There's so many goddamn characters. I can't keep track of this shit. How am I supposed to keep track when there's a gajillion words written down on the page about all of these characters? Like, for instance, Dauntless is now this like Endbringer. He can see through multiple worlds. He is physically in multiple worlds at once. Simurgh is interested in him. He's gone completely insane because he was locked in a time bubble, unable to move for like 3 years or whatever, and his power overloaded and made him a massive Titan level being. How the fuck am I supposed to remember who Dauntless is when the last time he showed up was the Leviathan fight in Worm? Drives me insane, because Wildbow does this also. Wildbow writes so much. There is so much shit on the page at any given time reading Word or Worm. But what Wildbow doesn't do is what a lot of other fantasy authors or science fiction authors do, especially in these long, like, for instance, like a long epic fantasy series, right? Wildbow does not recap shit at all. Example, obviously, at the time of recording this, Wind and Truth came out a month ago. So I just finished reading Wind and Truth, obviously, right? There is like tiny moments, like when a character who shows up in Wind and Truth who you haven't seen in a minute, or maybe hasn't even been seen since book 1, there's always a little sentence followed where it's like either a character is thinking about what they're doing, they're thinking about it, or the narrator is like, boop, 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 this is what they do, right? Wildbow doesn't fucking do that. So the amount of times I've had to wiki a character, because I'll be like, I think I know that name. I think they've mentioned that name before. Even new characters introduced in Ward, I'll be like, let me Google them real quick so I know what's going on. And then you're on the spoiler-filled Ward wiki. Now, I haven't been spoiled for anything yet, but it drives me insane because, and I take note, that's the other thing that kills me, is I take extensive notes on each chapter. That way, in case I need to ever look something up or I'm talking about it with a friend and they're like, I'm on this chapter, I can look at my notes and be like, okay, so you're on that chapter. Good to know. But even with my extensive notes, I literally went to my Worm notes and searched for the word Dauntless, and I had 2 mentions of it, and it was this, a character named Dauntless appears. This is his power. And then Dauntless is stuck in a time bubble. He's gone forever. Those were my 2 mentions of Dauntless, and now he is a Titan-level being. And yes, we got an interlude from his perspective. The interlude was interesting, getting to see his past, and it made me care a little bit about him. Sure. But I'm like, I can't be bothered to remember all these fucking characters if there's not any bit of recap or anything, or any POV changes outside of the interludes. There's nothing. And it drives me insane. All right, I had to take a breather there because I'm getting heated thinking about Ward, and I don't want to get heated thinking about Ward. So what I'm going to go do is read more Ward. I can't say the fucking... I can't even say the name of this shit. All right, I'm here recording a phone entry for Ward. So sorry about the audio quality. If it's better or worse, maybe let me know in the comments if you have a preference. I'm doing this because I'm out and I'm about. And I'm finished. God, I've read a lot of Ward. So last time we did this, I think I was on 14. Maybe I was on 15. Now I'm on 18. I'm on the start of 18. So I'm almost done. I've got 18, 19, and 20 left. And then I'm done with Ward. Thank fucking God. Oh my Lord. Okay, I have not been enjoying this. I mean, you've gotten my thoughts. It's been a little rocky. And it got a lot rockier. So I don't think I talked about the teacher stuff, but they did it. After what must have been in real time years of setup from Mr. John C. Wildbow, the teacher war. And I hated this. I thought this was bad. This has every issue I've had with Ward so far, compounded with a lot of the issues I have with Worm and Mr. Wildbow's storytelling. I still cannot stand the way he ends chapters and arcs on these big, like, cliffhangers where you're like, okay, you have to go read the next one, and then the next one takes place a couple hours later, or a couple minutes later, or blah, 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 or the characters have already started discussing it. Like, you skip over the vital and interesting things. And I've talked about it before, and maybe it's just because I'm a fantasy sci-fi reader and I want to read it all. But I grew up on the, like, Percy Jackson Warrior Cats book storytelling where they did the same thing, where a chapter could be however long, and it would end on this crazy, crazy cliffhanger where the incentive is to convince the child, to convince the kid, like, oh, you have to read the next one, right? It's a way to get people to keep reading. But in Percy Jackson and the Warrior Cats books, in this instance, it picks up right there. Like, the chapter ends on the cliffhanger that you want to know about. And the next chapter is about the fucking cliffhanger. But in Ward, and in Worm too, but we're not talking about Worm. In Ward, it's like, here's a cliffhanger. Here's an insane cliffhanger. They're gonna kill somebody. Someone's going, oh my God. Oh, and then, boom, cut to the future. And he doesn't do it all the time, but he does it enough that it's, oh my God, okay? It's pissing me off, and he does it in the teacher thing. And here's the thing. This teacher arc is just like mindless battle. Like, but I don't ever feel like there's never any fun tactics. And I really like Victoria as a character. I think Victoria is a good protagonist. Like, truthfully, her internal struggle of trying to figure out, one, what kind of hero she wants to be, and then two, what kind of person she wants to be, because she can't go back to being what she was, and she's, afraid of figuring out, like, am I supposed to be a leader who's smarter, or am I supposed to be the brute, or am I a mix of both, or am I something completely different? Like, I think this internal battle is really interesting, and I like the wretch as a concept. I like the idea that her power's kind of fighting her. It doesn't really work properly. My issue, though, is her powers are just so boring in a fight. I was describing this to my podcast co-host, Nolan, and we're going to make a Ward episode of that. So you're going to get 2 Ward videos on the channel. But I was describing it to Nolan where I was saying reading Victoria, to me, is like reading a book made of prose about Superman. It's beyond boring. Like, I need to see that. Because when I'm reading a Superman comic book, I love Superman comic books. So when I'm reading a Superman comic book, it's like, he rushes at the enemy. He tackles the enemy into space. He punches the enemy. And it's gorgeous to look at. The artists are full sending it. Like, you're getting this fucking beautiful visual imagery, Whereas if you just read that in prose, it's kind of boring. Just be like, I tackle him with all of my strength. And that's it. And you're like, okay. Like, yeah, I guess you do that, Whereas in Worm, And even in some of the interludes in Ward, you get superpowers that are on the sort of weaker side. Now, Taylor has a really strong power by the end of it, but at the start, Taylor's like, I can control bugs. Well, what do I do with that? Well, I'm going to lace their stingers with like pepper spray. So I'll actually be like, when I stab them with the bees or the ants or whatever, they'll be pepper sprayed. And you're like, oh, like, okay. Like, you're using your really kind of shitty on paper power and turning it into a deadly effective weapon. And now Victoria doesn't have to do that. But all she does is like punch people. And she's got this like emotion effect power. And she uses it sometimes. And then when she does, it doesn't really do anything. It's never like really stopped a villain. And so this teacher arc, just being like fighting, it was draining. It was draining me. Because I was just like, I just don't care. Like, I'm sorry. But okay, you're fighting teacher. Cool, you know. The most interesting part of the arc for me is when Breakthrough and a couple of the, like, Imp and then a couple of the Heartbreak, they rescue Contessa. You know, one of the fucking Cauldron, like, legendary capes who, like, is crazy powerful. Also one of the millions of names you have to remember to enjoy Parahumans, or you're going to the wiki every 2 seconds. They run into Contessa, and she basically says, like, this is it. We have 3 options. Now, you could tell there's kind of more options, but she gives them 3, like, decent options. And she tells Breakthrough, because they're just there, because they are right here with her now, that they have to make the choice between these 3 options. And this, like, chapter of, like, talk, or 2 chapters, this was good. I was like, ooh, holy shit. Because option 1 is, like, most of the heroes survive, you beat teacher, hundreds of civilians die, right? Or thousands, or whatever. Option 2 is, like, most of the heroes die, teacher accomplishes what he wants to do, and then you capture him. And that one's pretty bad. And then option 3 is one member of Breakthrough dies immediately, another one suffers for a long period and then dies, and teacher gets away, but they might capture him right after. Or, like, he gets away, but he doesn't finish his plan. And so they end up going with this option C, which is, like, really interesting. And they have this big, long debate about it. Like, Kenzie doesn't want to do it. Sveta kind of just wants to beat the shit out of Contessa because she worked for Cauldron. Valid. You know, and they do this thing. And then eventually, Ashley, or Swansong, is the one who dies. And here's my fucking problem. They're doing the teacher thing. We get to some interludes. And it's one of those interludes where you're jumping back and forth between different perspectives. And on paper, I like this idea. Because you're thinking, me describing it to you if you haven't read it, you're thinking like, oh, you're jumping back and forth between the different members of Breakthrough. And you're seeing like tensions are riding high. Like maybe, you know, Tristan is going to die. Or maybe Sveta dies. Or Victoria dies. Or Ashley dies. Or Kenzie dies. Or Rain dies, right? Like, you're nervous, you know? Because you're getting hints. It's like you get hints that it might be Tristan. Like Tristan and Byron are like, we think it might be us. And it turns out Byron is the one who gets like fucked up and potentially suffers for a long time and then dies. But we're still not sure about that. But Byron gets incapacitated, basically crippled. So he has to switch to Tristan for a while. But all of this happens off screen. And I don't necessarily mean off screen in the sense that we don't see any of it, because we do see some of it, which is an improvement. But we see it from the perspective of villains, of the people working for Teacher. And nothing has pissed me off more, because Swansong, who has become one of my favorite members of Breakthrough, and one of my favorite Parahumans characters, because she's one of the only ones that has a genuine character arc for the better. The entirety of Ward is showing her becoming a better person and a better superhero. Now, she's still rocky. It's not perfect, but she's truly getting there, to the point that she sacrifices her life for Valkyrie ghosts. She and Valkyrie herself. She's not even sacrificing her life for like a member of Breakthrough or, you know, Victoria or Kenzie. No. She does it for Valkyrie and her flock. Like a truly heroic moment. And it happens from the perspective of a fucking villain killing her. I still am livid. That's like, on paper, that's very interesting. it would be very interesting to read a story where you're flipping back and forth between, let's say, Swan Song and the person killing her, so you get both of their perspectives. That's pretty unique. That would be very interesting. But I want to see that from Swan Song's perspective, especially because you gave us an entire Swan Song backstory interlude arc. And it was kind of middling and boring and really ruined the pacing of Ward for me at the time. But I fucking read it. I read an entire arc from the perspective of Swan Song, or Ashley, whatever you want to call her, just for her to die, and I don't even get to see her thoughts. What the fuck, man? That's just so unsatisfying and like poorly written and just not how you make like a satisfying conclusion. And I'm not saying everything in this has to be like set up and the dominoes have to fall in the right pieces and, you know, you can't change things and change your mind on certain story beats, because that's how writing works. Sometimes you set up a thing and then you realize, I don't really like this thing. And I'm sure it's a lot harder when you're making a web serial like 2 chapters weekly or whatever, so you have to like constantly put out content. You don't really get to think about it. But do you not think? Does the brain not function at all? Did you think it would be like a good idea, like just to never see her perspective, to give us all of her perspective, and then in the moment of her death, when she does one of the most heroic things she can do, one of the most heroic things people in the fucking Worm universe do. These parahumans suck. They're all assholes. They all fucking blow ass. None of them are like, not none of them. Very few of them are like true superheroes who are doing it for the love of the game. Most of them are like coerced into it, or they're doing it because they don't want to kill people, but they have superpowers, so I guess they might as well be good guys. And Ashley, one of those characters, a villain turned hero, a full character arc from a Slaughterhouse 9 member, heroically sacrifices herself, and we don't get to see it. I gotta move on. They fucking don't capture Teacher. He gets away, and it turns out Teacher's whole thing is he's messing with the agents and he's messing with the aliens. And it turns out this next arc I couldn't care less about, because we're setting aliens back up. Basically, the agents are like, okay, well, Scion failed, so we gotta do what Scion wanted to do, which is like fucking get all powerful and then spread across the galaxy or whatever, and just basically redo the process over and over again. Like, so they're trying to do what Scion's doing. That's it. They go into the dream world and they interact with the agents, which, I mean, is kind of interesting world building wise, but I don't care. Like, we just did. Worm ends with this insane alien cataclysmic threat where he destroys multiple planets, including basically the entirety of the planet our story took place on. And all of Ward has been, the aliens killed our planet and now our homes suck and we have to live on multiple Earths. Like, all of Ward has been non-stop talking about this. And now they're finally getting into it, and I just don't care. Like, I just want to see Breakthrough do like superhero things, because originally you're like, okay, so Teacher is like bad because he's trying to take over the world and he has a superpower that might let him do that. Okay. And now it's like, actually he's being controlled by his agent and he might not even really be in control of himself. And then Victoria breaks his crystal, which I think destroys his power, because they have like crystals in the dream world. I don't know. I don't care about the agent plot. And that was like all of 16, but I'll tell you what, I read all of 17 and I liked 17, because it's still setting up the agent plot, and the agents are turning people into massive titans that are like Endbringer level threats, which I'm like, Jesus Christ, we're doing this shit again. But all of 17 is about Victoria having like character growth. And the team gets split up because they do the stream thing. Like, the wardens come in and they're like, absolutely not. You can no longer work together until we say so, which I think is really interesting. The actions or consequences for their actions, you know? And then it's Amy. Like, Amy and Chris start to make a move against the machine army, and then the Titans get involved because Amy and Chris have made like clone fake Titans of other superheroes, and so the Dauntless Titan with the Simurg is like, what the fuck, you can't do that. And so Victoria has to like talk to Amy and like other characters are now learning that Amy is a threat, and it's Amy, and I fucking hate Amy, and Victoria fucking hates Amy, and now other characters are learning to hate Amy, and like Vista and Sveta hate Amy, and I'm like, go Vista and go Sveta. Vista and Byron are fucking, but they're not really fucking because they can't do that. That's besides the point. I liked 17 because it was all talk, and it was mostly well written. Back with a little phone update because I am busy traveling and doing shit while listening to and reading Ward. Holy fuck. I just finished 18 and 19, I think, from the last time we did this. Maybe I did 18 in the last one. Wow. So Ward is ending, and we've got another world-ending Gold Morning event here with the Titans, the fucking passengers or the agents trying to fulfill Sion's, his plan, right? And so when a parahuman just fucking loses it and cracks and they can't do it anymore, their passenger, their agent, the alien, takes over and they become big kaiju titans, right? Which we saw with Dauntless ages ago. In like 11 or 12 when that happened. But now more of them are coming. And it's basically all of the precogs and the thinkers are basically like, yeah, it's cooked. Like, the world is cooked. It's over. More Titans are going to keep being made. Like, even if we killed all the Titans that are here now, they're going to keep being made. The Titans are trying to, like, link up and become part of a network, which will basically fulfill their plan of destroying the Earth. At the same time, the Simurgh is fighting the Titans and also fighting the heroes because she wants to, like, enslave everyone so she can win over the Titans, basically. It is a fucking disaster. And it's all come to a head. And I, originally when this started, I really didn't care. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, oh, I don't care. Like, we're doing another world-ending event. Like, I'm more interested in the characters and their arcs than I am the aliens taking over the world. But I'll say it, I was wrong. I really enjoyed 19 as a whole. I thought 19 was really good. Here's big issue. There's at least from 18 and 19 several chapters of just like nothing. And what I mean by that is it's like fighting, and it sort of has the same thing that Gold Morning had from Worm, where like they're just kind of throwing bodies at these Titans and more Titans are being created and nothing is like getting done. They're not like winning or making any ground, and it's just like chapters of war of like fighting kaijus, which like 1 or 2 is fine, but I felt like it was getting to a point where every character is like, okay, the world is ending, and they're still like, well, let's go throw ourselves at these Titans. Like, they weren't trying to figure anything out. It was just kind of getting a little monotonous. But then Breakthrough, they lock it in. Victoria comes up with this plan where, I mean, she's like all on the dream world. Like, it's all about the dream world. And so they go to the dream world, but they send Rain and like regular humans. And these chapters were well written. They're 2 Gilpatrick interludes. But I will be honest, I wish they were just Rain interludes, because in this moment you see like Love Lost like helps, like she saves Rain, and it's like, oh, what a fun full circle character moment. And like all these characters are recognizing Rain as a hero, and we just don't even get it from Rain's perspective. We get it from Gilpatrick's perspective, and I don't dislike Gilpatrick, and I didn't dislike the chapters, but it's just one of those fucking weird ass Wildbow decisions where I'm like, you have several main characters. Let me read from the perspective of those main characters. Like, there's enough, and all of the characters of Breakthrough differ with their powers and their mental states and like their issues and stuff, that like they're interesting. It's interesting to read from all of their perspectives. Like, why won't you just fucking let me do it? I thought that was interesting. I don't know how much I care that it's now been introduced that you can go into the dream world and there's like these crystals that are, at first there's like kaijus in, like, your agent is in the dream world and it's like a kaiju, and then also you can like touch these crystals and see memories and then also alter your powers a little bit. I think we're way late in the game of Worm and Ward. Like, I mean, we're fucking what, millions of words in at this point, and like dozens of chapters, and at the end of seemingly the Parahumans itself, it doesn't, I don't, there's not a third one out currently. I don't know if Wildbow plans on writing a third one, but like this is seemingly the end, and we're just now like, actually you could go into the dream world and completely alter your power. Like, it's a lot. I think this arc, my biggest complaint is I think it's like too much, and I really don't know, because I just finished 19, I really don't know how he's gonna wrap it up in one, because they're not in a good spot as far as the ending of 19 goes. It fucking Wildbow does the stupid shit he's been doing all Ward and all of Worm, where Victoria has a plan, and it's not really a good plan, but they won't tell you what that plan is. And like she keeps hinting at it, and then Breakthrough and stuff are like, I don't really know if we like this plan, but it's the only plan we have, so we have to go do it. And I'm like, what the fuck is the plan? Like, what, can you tell me what the plan is? And they're like, no, sorry, we actually can't tell you at all what the plan is. You're going to have to find out next chapter. Like, I don't know. I just wish they would. It pisses me off because it's contrived. And not in a way where Victoria's like hiding a secret. Because my issue is it's first person. Like, for the most part. Or it's like third person limited. So like we're in Victoria's mind, and she'll come up with a plan, and she'll be like, yeah, this plan could make or break it. This plan could be crazy. And then you'll cut. There'll be like a time jump, and her whole team will have known, and they just won't talk about it. It, like, they're purposely avoiding saying it because they're in a story, and it really pisses me off. I don't like that literary device, or that storytelling device in general, and I hate that Wildbow uses it like a guy with a broken leg uses a crutch. Like, bro does not... Wildbow, if you're watching this, I really like your stories, and I doubt you've made it this far because I've been really negative on Ward, but god damn, man, I hope in your other web serials / stories you have other crutches, because fuck, dude, it's so annoying reading Worm and Ward, and it's always like that. Like, there's never just a moment until later. Like, you get the clarity moment, but you only get the clarity moment after you've been confused for like 2 chapters in a row. For instance, there's a gajillion Titans. Victoria comes up with a plan. It's a fucking crazy plan. They don't know if it's gonna work, but she needs Amy. They don't really explain why they need Amy, but she needs Amy. She goes to Amy, and her and Amy have a fucking conversation. Now, Amy's been getting therapy the whole time. I fucking hate Amy. But Amy's like, I'm so sorry. I now understand why my actions were wrong. I now, blah, 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 you know, the therapy has really helped me, blah, 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 blah. You know? And, like, of course, and she's like, I'm never going to use my powers again. I think it's better for the entire world if I never use my powers again. First of all, fuck you, Amy. Second of all, Victoria goes, okay. And she leaves after having this conversation with Amy. And then she's like, all right, we got to go to Bonesaw. We need to go get Bonesaw. And so they go to get Bonesaw, and then, like, Bonesaw's like, well, Amy would help you a lot more. And they're like, well, she's not helping us. And Bonesaw goes, okay, I think I know what you guys are going to do, so I'll help you. And it's like, just fucking tell me. Like, can I know as the reader, or do I just have to keep reading Ward? You know? I don't know. So all of my issues from at the start of Ward are still here. That being said, you know, I think 19 is like a very good moment for character arcs in general. Victoria has completed her arc. She has sort of come like into her own as a hero, and it's really nice to see. And she also realized, like, she's got this, like, this whole time she's had this chip on her shoulder with all of her family members and Amy, and like not moving on and not letting things go. And she's like watching these crystal visions and seeing the world end, and she's like, you know what, like, sometimes, like, I don't ever have to forgive Amy, I don't ever have to like hang out with Amy or forgive my parents for certain things, but like I do have to come to terms with it, you know. And so it was nice to finally see that. And then Tristan, I want a big shout out Tristan here for being one of my favorites, probably my favorite member, actually, of Breakthrough. And I wish we got to read more of this from his perspective, but Tristan is kind of not doing too well. He's not doing too well. Byron's injured, so there's, he's not switching out to Byron a lot. And that's really hurting him because, like, him and Byron actually care about each other now, and we got to grow and see that happen more. And then Tristan starts to break. He starts to crack. He's going to become a Titan. And Moonsong, Byron's ex-girlfriend, and this is all from Moonsong's perspective, and I liked these chapters, but I do wish it was from Tristan's perspective, but okay. Moonsong and Sveta try to calm him down so he doesn't, like, crack and turn into a Titan. And Tristan basically, like, kills himself in a sort of heroic sacrificey way where he's like he drops like concrete on him and then switches out to Byron in like just the perfect moment or something. So like Tristan dies and it is now just Byron. There is no more Tristan. And he does it to avoid becoming a Titan and to save his brother, as a sacrifice to save his brother after he kind of tried to murder his brother. And I don't know, that for me, that hit me, and I had to like stop reading Ward for the day. I was like, wow, like it was really good. It's a fantastic character arc for Tristan. I wish we had gotten to see it from Tristan's perspective. I think the Moonsong perspective worked because it was also fun to see Moonsong not wholly forgive Tristan, but like be like, okay, you fucked up. We will move on now. Like that was, I really like seeing that as well. That like even, the people that Tristan had wronged in the past were moving on and learning to live with him. And it was great to see that. And I do wish we got to see it more from Tristan's perspective, or even a little bit from Byron's perspective. Like, I mean, I know what he's thinking with his brother dead, but like, I'd like to be, I wish there were more POV changes. Overall, that's my biggest issue here. I just wish we would switch between the characters more to truly, to get better understandings of them. Because Wildbow, you are really good at new POVs and different characters feeling like different characters. You're pretty good at that. You just don't do it very often, and you only do it in long-ass, fuck-ass interludes that sometimes matter way too much, and then sometimes don't matter at fucking all. Speaking of, real quick, before I end this and then go finish Ward, yay, I'm free, right? Fucking Brian came back to life. Valkyrie brought Brian back to life, and then he helps calm Kenzie down, because Kenzie was freaking out a lot after Tristan died, and Kenzie almost, I think, was going to start snapping, and then Brian helped calm her down, and Kenzie's going to stay out of the final battle. They convinced her to not do it. She actually went along with it, which I'm pretty proud of Kenzie for that. But fucking Brian's back, which is Clock Blocker and Kid Win came back the other day, and I was like, what the fuck? Those are my boys, But like Gru, fucking, and I don't know, it was crazy. It was wild to see him just come back, and it was fun. We got that from Imp's perspective, and that I really loved. We got to see Imp react, and we got a Brian perspective, but we got to see Imp react to her brother coming back to life. And also we got to see how much Imp has changed as a person, which I also really love. She's like really become kind of like a mom to the heartbroken, and it's really fun to see, considering I fucking hated her when she first showed up. It's over. I'm free. I made it. I never... I'm fucking free! God damn it. Holy shit, that's right. I just finished Ward, okay? And here's the thing. I'll be honest. I really liked this ending. I did. That was a good ending. Recap, I guess. 20 is all about them fighting the Simurgh, and we finally actually learn Victoria's plan. So first they have to beat the Simurgh. That's kind of number one. They want the Titans to win, in air quotes. Wildbow is really good with like the big kaiju fights, like when they're fighting Scion, Leviathan, or Behemoth, he's really good at the like, how do we beat Godzilla, It's very interesting reading that. Especially Simurgh, a character who can see the future. So it's really fun getting that, and she can like fuck with your minds and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. There was a bit there in the middle where I was getting sick of it because it was just the characters getting the shit kicked out of them by the Simurgh over and 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 over, right? And it was like, oh, they're losing. And then Chris betrays them because he's a fucking idiot, and he doesn't make the part of the plan that he needed to make. And then they end up getting it made, which I thought was a little weird. I don't even really understand. I don't get Chris's character. Every character in Ward, whether I like it or not, I'm looking at you, Amy fucking Dallin, has a character arc. They grow, they evolve. Some of them regress, but they regress in a way that makes a lot of sense, right? Chris Doesn't change at all. I just didn't get it. I don't, maybe I missed it. I don't know. I don't really understand the point of his character. But he betrays them, and it's okay. They make the what I'll call the disease anyways, which essentially knocks all the parahumans out, or puts them to sleep, and then puts them in like dreams. So they're in like the crystal world where they just like won't leave ever. But their bodies will die. So it's kind of like a mass genocide of the parahumans, because this will throw off the Titans from their plan, and the Titans will lose or die or something. But it turns out there was a contingency that if the Titans give up whatever they're drilling for, then the humans can bring the parahumans back. And they do. And so all the characters survive. They all have a happy ending, you know, like, shockingly, like, the epilogues are all nice. Unlike Worm. That's what here's the thing. I have a lot of issues with Ward. I don't love Ward. I don't love Worm either. I like a lot of it. I like a lot of the ideas. I think Wildbow's writing has improved from Worm, but he still has some of the same problems, and I think that might have to do with it being a web serial, where like every chapter has to end with a sort of cliffhanger-y ending, and you got to kind of drag things along further than they would normally be dragged along, and you know, there's a lot of like typos and grammatical issues, which of course I understand. He's putting out like 2 to 3 chapters a week, like I get it, you know, and the POV changes might also be because he doesn't really have a lot of time to think about what he's writing if he's putting out 2 to 3 chapters a week. I get it, right? Now, these are the only 2 web serials I've actually read, but I think I take issues with the format of web serials if they are all like this. I'm not saying they're all like this. Maybe I'll read more in the future and videos will be on the channel. I don't know. Who's to say? Not for a long fucking time, I'll tell you. But as I was going to say, the ending of Ward, unlike the one with Worm, I really enjoyed, actually. I have, like, no complaints, because the ending of Worm... Now, obviously, when I was reading Worm, I knew there was a sequel. But, like, all of the epilogues are, like, sad and doomer, and they're like, who knows what's going to happen in the future. Like, all the characters are going to have to kill a lot of people. It's going to be really bad in the future, you know? Which is fine. But for me, that's not my kind of story, especially with superheroes. I'm a big superhero guy. I've got a fucking Spider-Man tattoo, you know? I understand the doom and the gloom, and that it's necessary sometimes. But with superheroes, I'm very much of the mindset where it's like, listen, they're about hope. You know, they're about responsibility. They're about dreams and what you do with these powers and how you are made a better person, or even if you're made a worse person, like how you strive to be a better person, right? Like that's what superheroes are inherently about. They're about saving people. And I appreciate that at the end of the day, Ward became about that. Even with characters I don't like, it is about bettering oneself and accepting the truths about yourself and the things around you and how you can't control everything, and you have to accept who you are, right? And even with Amy, like Amy had a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a redemption, but she like, you know, she's like, I'm going to stop using my power. I realize I'm, like, wrong. And, like, she had this moment. It was really pissing me off reading it. But, you know, in the end, like, I get it. You know, it's kind of the theme of Ward. It's, like, the base idea. So I understand Amy had to come with it, which is what makes Chris a little weird. But it was fun, especially that last epilogue chapter. It was really nice. It was a Vista chapter, and it was her birthday, which they've been talking about. They did a big Brockton Bay get-together. You know, Victoria shows up. Rachel's there. Tattletale's there. Imp's there. Parian, Foil, like... fucking Kidwin and Clockblockers show up, and then eventually Olive Breakthrough and a bunch of other characters show up, and they kind of just like talk for a couple chapters, and then Tristan shows up because actually Tristan's like half alive in the dream world, and Kenzie found a way to kind of bring him back to life, and they're also going to work on bringing other people back to life, like Dauntless and Fume Hood, which is, I don't know, it's fun. It's a fun ending. Like I feel good. I don't feel bad like in Worm, even though Worm kind of had a decent ending where like Taylor and her dad are still alive. It's still like, that was weird. It was still a weird decision. It's weird that it never came up in this one at all. Loosely, I think Tattletale was kind of hinting at it a little bit ago. In one of the earlier chapters, she mentioned she has one non-powered friend, and I think maybe she was talking about Taylor. But I think it's a little weird overall that Taylor never is like, she never acknowledged that she's alive. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's really... Khepri is really important. You'd think it would come up. But I'm also kind of glad it didn't. I think it's a little odd it didn't, but I'm sick of Taylor. And I do enjoy Victoria as a POV, like, main character a lot more than I enjoyed Taylor, because I like superheroes. And that's Ward. I'm fucking done. I am free. I think comparing it to Worm, I think it's about equal. I think it's a little worse in the sense that it doesn't feel as like thought out for me. It feels in parts a little rushed. It feels like things, like, I think the overall arcs and what happens is a little thought out, but it feels like things, some arcs and some things wrap up more quickly than they needed to, or they take longer than they should have. And Worm had that issue as well, but I feel like it was more noticeable here. And I think tone was definitely an issue with this one. Worm the whole time was getting darker, and the stakes were raising every single arc. And this one, it felt like it tried to do it, realized it shouldn't do it, and then definitely committed to doing it a couple so it sort of bounced back and forth. I think Ward was a little more all over the place. I think it definitely could have used POV changes more. Like Worm, I was encountering that issue, but not as much. Worm is very clearly Taylor's story. And while Ward is Victoria's story, it's also kind of a story about the whole world and worlds, I guess. And it felt a little odd that, like, you never get to, for the most part, see into other characters' perspectives. And I think it should have switched back and forth between them a lot more. Also, man, Kidwin and Clockblocker should have come back sooner. They were goats. They were my favorite wards in Worm. And I wish we got more of them in this, because there were like hints of them in the final battle. They're like doing things, they're helping fight Simurgh, and I'm like, guys, like, these are the goats, bro. I loved those two. Like, it's cool that they're back, but they didn't I don't really even know why they came back. They didn't even really do anything. They both got like one cool moment, like Clockblocker freezes Simurgh, and then Kidwin picks up Victoria's fuck off gun she was using and makes it better, you know? Like, they both had one cool moment. But I don't know. I felt it was one of those decisions where I was like, what? You know? It's over. I don't think there will be any more Parahumans. If Wildbow does put out more Parahumans, I will probably... If this video does really well, and he puts out more Parahumans, or if this video does really well and people in the comments want me to read more Wildbow, I will do it, but not for at least 2 years. I've got other shit I want to read. And this Wildbow takes too much time to read. Overall, though, I would give Ward... Well, you know what? I don't know if I ranked Worm. I would give Worm a solid 7 out of 10, and I would give Ward a solid 7 out of 10. I think they're both equal. I think they're both valid. I think I don't really like web serials, and I'm sick of Parahumans. The end.